Hi guys, so it is 31 degrees in the UK today, so naturally I am sat indoors sweating like a pig in a slaughter pen, working on a ranking that nobody asked for, and in fact most people probably don't even know what it is. So, for the uninitiated, I will offer a brief explanation as to who or what Jack Ryan is, but first I must sidestep into the world of novels. So there was once this famous author called Tom Clancy. He died roughly 10 years ago, and he made a career of writing political thrillers, mostly centered around the same character, Jack Ryan, who was and still is actually a political analyst in the CIA, because these books have continued to be written even after Clancy's death. There's a whole boatload of authors who have permission from the estate to carry on writing them, and I think there's about 40 at the time of doing this video. There's a lot of them, but Ryan is an analyst, and later in the book series he goes on to be president of the United States because he works his way up. So this is very much a guy who defeats his enemies with his brain rather than with a Walther PPK or any other kind of weapon. And I think that's what makes him quite relatable. He's very different from the normal hero in any kind of spy thriller, really. I don't think there are many people who really believe that they could be James Bond or Ethan Hunt or Spider-Man. But Jack Ryan, I mean, that's semi-believable that somebody could become him, right? You've just got to get in on the bottom rung of the CIA, just work your way up in various desk jobs, and then eventually become the president. I mean, anybody can do that these days, and I mean anybody, right? So, yeah, it's actually something attainable that most people believe they could do when they read these books. And I've read 7 or 8 of them at this point, so I've still got a long way to go if I was going to go through the whole series, but they are very long, technical books. I mean, this guy Clancy, he was like the Stephen King of the espionage thriller world. I mean, his books are long and deep, and they take a long time to get through. And I feel so exhausted after reading one of them that I've got to take a long break before reading the next one. But there have been quite a few films made from these books, 7 at the time of doing this video. I'm going to talk about these films today in the order of worst to best, in my opinion. It's not a series that has a very consistent vision, so most of these films have different actors playing Jack Ryan. Only once has the same actor played the character a second time, which is unbelievable, really. But they just keep rebooting and reimagining this series. But at least it gives us a lot to talk about, I guess, in a video like this. So let's dive into it. Enough waffle. Let's get into the actual ranking and talk about some Jack Ryan movies on this really hot summer's day. And we will start with the one that I consider to be the least watchable Jack Ryan movie. So put up the first slide. So at number 7, we have Jack Ryan Ghost War, which just happens to be the most recent Jack Ryan film that came out. How often does that happen, where you watch a ranking and the film at the bottom is the most recent to come out? It's as if YouTubers watch the latest film in a series and think, this is a betrayal of the character. I have to go online and talk about all the good ones. You know, that's not necessarily what happened here, but I can imagine it does happen a lot in the YouTube film community or whatever. This film's not horrendous. It is the worst of a good bunch, but I did get frustrated with it for more than a few reasons. That title, by the way, Ghost War. So this is largely set in Dubai, and it's called Ghost War. And a while ago we had a Mission Impossible film called Ghost Protocol, and the main location in that film was also Dubai. Interesting. So this one follows on from the Jack Ryan TV show, which ran on Amazon for 4 seasons, I believe. I've never seen it. I presumed that I would just be able to watch this movie and it wouldn't matter that I hadn't seen the TV show, and I guess that is the case. But there were still many frustrating little nods and winks to the TV show in this, especially in the first hour. And I recognised that they were happening, but they were still going over my head, kind of a thing. And it's just frustrating that they were there at all. So I'm guessing that the TV show ended with Ryan leaving the CIA for a quieter life in the world of finance. Because at the start of this, the head of the CIA, Admiral Greer, is trying to get Ryan back into the game. He thinks he's out, but they're going to pull him back in, that kind of game. And as soon as they've persuaded him to come back, then they're on a mission. Loads of random bits of dialogue that are just annoying. Like somebody will get on their earpiece and say things like, "Hey, I bet you missed this, Ryan, when you were at your desk job." And, "Hey, it's just like old times, eh, Ryan?" And I'm like, just cut this crap out. I don't want to be reminded that there's a whole TV show that I've not seen. But once you get into the second half, the film's pretty solid. It's got a good story with a few twists. This particular film is not based on any of the Clancy novels, so I had no idea where it was going. There's a really good action scene on top of a big, massive big building in Dubai. And I was reasonably satisfied at the end. I just so happen to think that this is the worst of the movies. Ryan in this is played by John Krasinski. He's probably better known as Emily Blunt's husband, though he's had a pretty decent career in his own right, to be fair. He's heavily involved with the Quiet Place movies, and he makes for a reasonable Ryan, although he plays the character a touch nerdy for me, which would be fine, but for the fact that when he's got a machine gun in his hand, he's running around like John Wick. So there's a little bit of too wide a contrast between the extremes of the character there. But I wouldn't mind seeing Krasinski play this character again in another movie, just for the fact that it would be nice to see anybody at this point take up the mantle for a second time in a row. That seems beyond what's possible with these movies, but it could happen. He is a very popular Jack Ryan. The TV show was quite well received, and I'm not sure how this movie is reviewed, but yeah, it's okay. Like I said, it just so happens to be the worst today. So number 6, we have Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit from 2014. I don't think it's a coincidence that the bottom 2 films today are the only 2 films in this list that aren't based on actual Tom Clancy novels. I don't want to be that guy who's like, in order to have a good Jack Ryan movie, it's got to be based on actual pure Clancy material. And yet, here we are with these 2 at the bottom. So this is the most origin story of the Jack Ryan movies. We follow a very young version of the character played by Chris Pine, just at the point that he's joining the CIA. And he quickly ends up on this mission to Russia. I think it's St. Petersburg rather than Moscow. And he's got to get past Kenneth Branagh's villain. A villain, by the way, who feels very similar to the villain that Branagh played in Tenet, almost identical, in fact. He's got to get past this guy and steal some info off a laptop that is in Branagh's office at the top of this very high building. And we spend most of the movie on this little bit of espionage. So we end up with one of those cliched scenes where Ryan is sat in front of a laptop and he's got the thumb drive in the side of the machine downloading the data, and there's a little download bar that shows him what percentage it is done, and it'll be 20%, and then it's 35%, but times are ticking because the camera shows us that some goons are coming up the stairs, and he's got somebody in his earpiece "Come on, Ryan, you've got to get out of there." And he's like, "No, I'm almost done." And then just at the last minute, it'll get to 100%. It'll pull it out of the laptop just as the goons are coming in the door. But by the time that they do, the camera will flick round and there'll be an open window that Ryan's just disappeared through, or an empty duct into the roof that he disappeared into. I can't remember exactly how this scene ended, only that I've seen it a million times before. It's just one of those really cliched scenes, somebody downloading stuff off a laptop when they've only got a limited time to spare. So, like I said, this takes up most of the runtime, and then we finish with an action set piece back in New York that feels very Die Hard 3. So we have to go underground beneath is it the Hudson River in New York? And there's a chase, and there's a danger of flooding, and for some reason the 47 Dead Presidents riddle popped into my mind for absolutely no reason during this chase in this movie. This one is a bit more consistent in its quality throughout when compared to Ghost War, but the whole way through it, I was a little bit demotivated because I knew coming in that this was just going to be a one and done for Chris Pine, and also it's not based on any of the actual Clancy novels, so it was kind of like, come on then, let's do this. This is the fifth one, and I've still got two more to go after this. It was that kind of feeling. But the movie's okay, it really is. At number 5, we have The Hunt for Red October. I guess this is as close as we will come in this ranking to something constituting a surprise, because this is a film with a pretty decent reputation if you go back far enough. So this was the first of these movies to come out, actually, way back in 1990. It was also the first Tom Clancy book that he wrote for this series. It's not the first in terms of the Ryan timeline, because he would dip in and out of the timeline to write his books. So if you were going to get into these, you would start with Without Remorse, which takes place in the 70s. And then I think The Hunt for Red October takes place at some point in the 80s. It's like the fourth book in the timeline. But you can tell when you read this book that it was very early on in Clancy's career, because even though he was very strong on the technical stuff pretty much straight away, I don't think he'd quite learned how to write a really engaging, exciting thriller, because there are books that come after The Hunt for Red October which are a hell of a lot more gripping as far as I'm concerned. This film is very by the numbers. It just follows the book almost to a T, for good or bad. It's a pretty enjoyable story, but the trouble is it doesn't focus on Ryan himself anywhere near enough. Like, Ryan's just a cipher in this movie. He's a blank slate. He's played by Alec Baldwin, who is absolutely fine as an actor, but he's got nothing to work on with this at all. Ryan is just a guy with dark hair working for the CIA. If this had been the only one of these films that I ever watched, I would come away from it not having a clue who Jack Ryan is meant to be as a character. He's just so blank compared to the Ryan of all the other movies. And then we've got Sean Connery playing a Russian sea captain, a captain of a submarine who is defecting away from Russia. To say that Connery is not cut out to play a Russian is an understatement. He's not even that convincing as a Scotsman, to be perfectly frank. He's got a voice which, without reading into like his early life, I'm guessing that he was born in Scotland but moved away quite early on, and it's left him with an accent that's kind of like half in, half out. It's a weird sort of voice, very distinctive. I mean, if you heard it, you would straight away know that it was Connery, but it always kind of takes me out of the movies that he's in sometimes. I don't notice it when I'm watching James Bond, but other movies that Connery does, sometimes I'll just think, that accent is so just Scottish, but not quite Scottish. It's kind of weird, but a grizzled old Russian sea captain, he is absolutely not. And then in this movie, he's of course speaking English for the most part, with a slight Scottish twang, and it's just kind of weird and not at all like any kind of Russian that I've ever heard talk. So yeah, this movie is kind of obsolete now, I would say. If you're going to get into the books, then this can still be quite enjoyable, because it's at an important part of the Ryan timeline. It's almost bang in the middle of Clancy's whole run. But the actual movie, if anybody of a certain age tries to tell you that The Hunt for Red October is a classic thriller from the early 90s, they are just lying. They're wearing rose-tinted glasses, because I don't remember this being all that impressive, even when my dad used to have it on our VHS shelf back in my teenage years, and it's certainly not that great a film now. At number 4, we have The Sum of All Fears, which was 2001, I think. So this is the 7th book in the series chronologically, and it's also one of Clancy's best, I would say, at least of the ones that I've read so far. So I think this was around about the point, I'm guessing, that Clancy decided in his head that he wanted Ryan to ascend to the presidency eventually in his career, because it just feels like in this one you get the vibe that Ryan is heading in that general direction. It would take a few more books before he would get there, but around about The Sum of All Fears is where that kind of starts for me, even though it's not said out loud. Although it would certainly be interesting to know when Clancy decided that Ryan was going to be president. It could be that he wanted that before he even wrote the first line of the first novel. Who knows? I've never read a biography or something, so I don't know. This particular story has an absolutely wild event that happens halfway through. I'm not going to tell you what that is, but when I first read it, I was just blown away. And I'm pleased to report that the movie doesn't shirk away from that. It has exactly the same thing at the exact point that it's meant to happen. And it's kind of like, whoa, can't believe they went there, but they did. Really exciting story. So Ryan is played by Ben Affleck in this one. He's attempting the same fresh out of the academy type Ryan that Chris Pine attempted, but I think Affleck does it better. He's helped by the fact he's got Morgan Freeman next to him in this. Affleck and Freeman share a very good chemistry, and this has got one of the best iterations of Kathy Ryan that I've seen in these movies as well. She's played by Bridget Moynihan in this one, who would go on to be a common fixture in the Blue Bloods TV show. But Kathy Ryan is a character. She's in some of these movies and some of them she isn't, but I think her presence in this definitely helps this particular movie. It's strong all the way through. A very solid novel, one of the best, I'd say, and also a really exciting movie. I'd not actually checked out this movie version until just recently when I decided to watch them all. And when I did, it was kind of like, oh, I can't believe I never checked this one out before, given that it's been out over 20 years at this point. A very good John Clark in this film as well. So Clark is like the brawn behind Ryan's brains in the movies. John Clark is like a wet work agent out in the field. He's very secretive. There's one novel called Without Remorse where you find out all about him, but in a lot of the other novels he just kind of pops up here and there to do some dirty work or whatever. But a very good Clark in this one, played by Liv Schreiber. I just really enjoyed the character as played in this particular film. So yeah, strong marks for this one, I think. At number 3, we have Without Remorse. So this is the only film in this ranking that doesn't actually feature Jack Ryan, and I reckon some people doing a ranking like this would not include it for that reason. But I had no intention of not including it because, as far as I'm concerned, this is still part of the overall Jack Ryan universe, and Jack's dad makes a cameo in the book version. It's more like an Easter egg than anything else, but it's still part of the same world, you know. Jack Ryan is out there somewhere in this universe, living his life as a kid. We just haven't seen him yet, if you see what I mean. So this one focuses more on the John Clark character who I was talking about earlier. So in this book, he's just left the Navy SEALs, even though he's like still in his 20s. I think he's like semi-retired. He gets this girlfriend called Pamela, but she's swiftly killed by some druggie she used to know. So Clark, it sends him over the edge, and he vows revenge over the drug kingpins of Baltimore and all their lackeys. So he starts going out on a night dressed like a tramp, puts like a beard on himself and gets himself like a bottle of Jack Daniels, and he's just like staggering around pretending to be a bum. And then when people let their guard down, he'll take them out. So night after night, he's going around the city just reducing the amount of drug dealers there are out there. So I guess he's sort of doing the world a favour, a bit like that guy in Death Wish, maybe. While all this is going along, during daylight hours, the CIA approach him and recruit him for a mission to Vietnam. There's some POWs who still need rescuing because this is early to mid-70s. I guess there still would have been some POW camps in existence. So it's like a dual plot thing that's going on in the book, but it's all changed in the movie. They've taken the Vietnam stuff out completely and just left in the revenge angle, but even that's really different. So instead of going after druggies in Baltimore, Clark is going after Russian paramilitaries who have killed his wife, who is also called Pamela, but I think it's his wife in this version rather than just his girlfriend. So yeah, it's a completely different story, but I don't mind because I think the novel as it was would have been very difficult to adapt that way. And from a movie executive's point of view, you would have had to have had the star dressed up like a bum for like half the film. That was never going to happen, really. Now, Clark is played by Michael B. Jordan in this, who is fantastic. You might better know him as Creed in those new Rocky spin-offs, and he was in the Black Panther movie. He's just every bit a Hollywood A-lister at this point of his career, and he really suits playing John Clark. I mean, he is terrific. I don't think the character is black in the books, but I wasn't bothered about the fact that Jordan is black in this. He's just so perfect for this role. He's brilliant. And the action sequences in this film are so varied. You get so much different stuff throughout the film. You get fights in prisons. You get like a plane crash going down into the ocean, and it's slowly filling with water, this plane. And Jordan's got to sort all that stuff out. And then there's like a big shootout in a building in Russia. And I was completely absorbed with this film. I was just really enjoying it. And halfway through, it actually crossed my mind that this might end up becoming my number one, which would be crazy given the fact that Jack Ryan's not in it. But I sort of gave myself a little slap at the end and thought, no, it's not quite a number one worthy film for my planned ranking, but it's certainly really good. And I immediately looked online after watching this to see if there were any plans to have this character come back in his own sequel, and it turns out that one has been greenlit, so they are planning to make a movie version of Rainbow Six. Now, this is a book that I've not quite yet got to because it's one of the later ones that Clancy did, but apparently it's another John Clark centric book, so I guess it's naturally one that they would think of doing after Without Remorse. But I think the film is in a little bit of development hell. It was greenlit in 2023. It's got that guy who directed the John Wick movies attached to it, Chad Stahelski, I can't remember his name. So we'll see if that does eventually come out. It'd be a shame if they didn't go through with it, but Without Remorse is a fantastic action film, and I was really impressed with it. And number 2, we have Patriot Games. So these two at the top both feature Harrison Ford as Jack Ryan, and for me, Ford is Ryan. Patriot Games was the first of these movies that I ever saw, and since then I've always had this association between Ford and the character. He's just perfect for this, Harrison Ford. He's that natural combination of looking sophisticated in the officey scenes, the analytical stuff, but he can also pick up a gun and dip his hand into the action side as well. He doesn't look uncomfortable with either of those positions, if you see what I mean. It's a nice balance. So Patriot Games was one of the early novels. It's also the first one to feature Ryan. He's not even in the CIA at the start of the book. So he's actually a lecturer at a naval college in Maryland, I think. And then he joins the CIA halfway through the story. So at the beginning, he's on holiday in London with his family, and he accidentally foils a terrorist plot. So the IRA try and kidnap the royals, but they fail largely because Ryan just happens to be in the street at the time and takes one of them out and saves the day. But from that moment onwards, the IRA basically want revenge against Ryan, or at least a certain splinter cell of the IRA want to get him. So they follow him back to the States and try and get him and his family any way that they can. The movie is 90% faithful to the novel. There are a few little minor changes here and there, but it still very much feels like the novel. Sean Bean plays the villain, and he's very good. He looks very young in this now, Sean Bean. But yeah, it's a really solid film. It's got a great finale. So eventually the villains descend on Ryan's big fancy house next to the Chesapeake Bay, and they've got night vision goggles and they're spilling into this house, and it's very exciting as all the good guys are trying to hide, and Ryan's losing his shit because he thinks that his family's going to get killed and stuff. There was a time in the 90s where every action film worth its salt seemed to be having villains with night vision goggles, whether it was Cliffhanger or this or Silence of the Lambs. It's like, if you wanted your villains to look really sophisticated and with a bit of money in their pockets, give them some night vision goggles. And every time that happened, the protagonists would always win the day, even though they were stumbling around in the dark, not being able to see at all. Just one of those things. But yeah, Patriot Games is absolutely fab. And I'm going to finish talking about it by telling you one of my favourite quotes from this movie. "Oh, you're not going to make me wear a rubber, are you, darling? The church says that's a sin." So yeah, at number 1, we have Clear and Present Danger. This is my favourite Jack Ryan movie. This one came out a couple of years after Patriot Games, I believe. Now, I do think that this and Patriot Games are both of roughly equal quality. But for me personally, there are 2 reasons why this one is out in front. Firstly, the plot just interests me a lot more. So even when it comes to the books, Clear and Present Danger is my favourite one. It's concerned with America trying to stop drugs coming in from South America. And I actually find that really interesting. Whereas with Patriot Games, yeah, it's a really great thriller, but it's to do with the IRA. And, you know, when I was growing up in the 90s and I first saw these movies, you couldn't turn on the news without hearing about the IRA. And as a kid, I was just sick of it. I was like, fuck the IRA. I'm sick of hearing about them. So the plot of Patriot Games was a little bit too close to home almost. Whereas Clear and Present Danger, it's this exotic world in the jungles of Colombia and Bolivia or wherever it is. And that to me was just, it was much more up my alley. And the second reason why I give the nod to this movie is that I saw this one at the cinema, whereas Patriot Games I just saw at home. And that makes a difference to me looking back, because they were hallowed days in the 90s, going to the cinema with my dad. We only went like 2 or 3 times a year, so it was always like a really special occasion. And my dad's passed away now. He's been gone for quite a while. So, you know, I look back on those memories and they're kind of special, you know. Like, we saw a lot of crap in the 90s, but even things like Batman Forever and Wayne's World 2, I look back and think, oh, it was sort of cool that we went to see those movies and had a good time out at the cinema, and it allowed me to get away from, you know, high school life and stuff like that. But Clear and Present Danger was actually one of the really good movies that we saw at the cinema. I don't think I understood the plot necessarily watching it at 14 years old, but I understand it now, and I think it's Clancy's best, in my personal opinion. There's probably loads of people who've got different favourites among the Clancy novels, and it would be my prediction that more people prefer Patriot Games actually to Clear and Present Danger, but not for me. So there we are. That was my Jack Ryan ranking. Thank you if you joined me all the way through this video, and I guess I will catch you all another time. Bye bye for now.